The Huskers are looking to bounce back after last week's 48-7 beatdown against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And right off the bat, the thing you have to ask is how will this Husker team respond after the beatdown that they suffered last week against the Buckeyes in what could arguably be the worst loss Nebraska has suffered in the 21st century. Because I think it's an exaggeration to call it the toughest loss Nebraska's faced ever. But in this 21st century, considering the circumstances, you had a lot of hope and optimism coming into the season. It was year 2 in the Scott Frost era, and picking up some momentum from 2018, carrying over into this year, it's been an underachieving season for them. And you also lose by 40 points, well, 41 points to be exact, when College game day is in your town for the first time in 12 years. It's just got to be the toughest loss Nebraska's ever faced in this 21st century. And I know there's been some worse losses for Nebraska, but you got to consider those kind of circumstances. And it's just been a seasonal issue for Nebraska. You don't play well offensively against South Alabama. You play decent offensively against Colorado, but the defense just completely shuts down the later on the game went. And you barely get past Illinois in Champaign, despite getting 673 total yards of offense. And last week, you could only generate a touchdown against Ohio State. So how will this team respond? And a big factor for this game right away, well, there's two of them. But what I think is going to be the biggest one, I'll say this right now. I'm predicting a low-scoring game. It may not appear low, but it's going to be a low-scoring game. The turnover margin. Northwestern is -3 in the turnover margin, and Nebraska is -4. So both these teams turn the football over a lot. But there is a silver lining to Nebraska this week. Is Northwestern has played 2-3 different quarterbacks this season. Their starter, Hunter Johnson, is only completing 48% of his passes. And Hunter Johnson he's been injured all throughout this season. And backup quarterback Aiden Smith, really not doing any better, only completing 38% of his passes. So if they can force the quarterback to make plays and preventing this running game of Drake Anderson and Isaiah Bowser, if they can eliminate the running game, then Nebraska is going to have a good chance at winning this game. And last year, the Huskers held Northwestern to only 32 yards rushing in last year's matchup. So that is going to be a big factor for the Huskers. And what's even better for Nebraska going into this week, Northwestern is 126th in total offense, 121st in pass offense, but they are better in the rushing offense at 77th in the FBS. So Northwestern is obviously going to use their running game to try to get momentum early in this matchup. And Nebraska has to get J.D. Spielman going, the star receiver, who only had one catch for 7 yards last week. But can Nebraska move the football on Northwestern? Despite Northwestern not looking good offensively, defensively, they're the 31st ranked defense in college football. Especially after seeing what Northwestern did last week against Jonathan Taylor. After that opening drive, Northwestern, they sold the run. However, Wisconsin has a much different philosophy of football right now than what Nebraska does. Wisconsin's philosophy is a run-first offense. And they stacked the box on Jonathan Taylor. And he struggled the further on the game went until eventually he started breaking free. And he ended up with over 100 yards rushing. So I see that taking place in this game. Nebraska, they have to provide space for their running backs. They got to provide space for Mills, Washington, Mosier, whoever's going to be in the running back position. They're going to have to make holes for their running game. Because Northwestern they'll sell the run. They'll stack the box on this Huskers on this Husker running game. But as far as my final score goes, like I said, I was going to predict a low-scoring game. I think Nebraska wins this game only by a score of 23-21. I think Northwestern is going to stay in this game. I do think their offense is going to get going a little bit, but I just don't think it'll be enough. I still think the Wildcats will generate some points, but in the end, I think Nebraska wins by a score of 23-21.